Watershed is can't be unnoticed. So thank you, Lisa, for being here today.
Thanks. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so my name is Lisa. I'm the Conservation Coordinator for Highway 2 Conservation. I don't know how many of you have heard about our organization. We've been around for a while, but we're a municipal partnership between 4 counties. So the County of Barrhead, Westlock County, Athabasca County, and Thorhill County. We're funded primarily through the Ag Service Board Enhanced Resource Stream. So we're on a 5-year cycle now, which is awesome. It helps us plan a little bit better. So we're in year 2 of that 5-year cycle, and we've been around since I believe 2010 was when we kind of first started going. There's municipalities that come and go, but since 2010, the majority of the counties have been part of H2C. We do sustainable agriculture and conservation, primarily focused on agricultural producers. We run various programs and initiatives focusing on promoting best management practices and education. And this whole show is run by me, the Conservation Coordinator. I took this role in 2016. I've been here since 2015 though. So one of our flagship programs is the Riparian Improvement Program. It's been around since about 2014, but it's been in planning since about 2012. It was originally envisioned to be only for crop producers, and the first projects under this program reflect that. But later projects kind of expanded the focus, and I'll talk a little bit more about why we did that a little later. And the first project site actually broke ground in 2014 in the County of Barrhead. So how the Riparian Improvement Program works, it's open to any agricultural producer in the H2C municipalities. Exempt from the program are acreage owners, locations with unnatural water bodies like dugouts or drainage ditches. While I'm not saying that those aren't important for water quality under certain aspects, for the program's purpose, we're only focusing on natural water bodies. So we advertise the program through social media, newsletters, website, but honestly, the most effective advertisement we have is word of mouth. So very few project sites have actually come through actually advertising the program. It's been through doing things like environmental farm plans with producers, meeting producers through other programs like my Save a Barn, Save a Bat program, word of mouth, neighbors. I say all the time that here in Barrhead, the coffee shop talk is the best advertisement I can get. So if I can get farmers talking about it to other farmers, then that's way more effective than anything I can do in terms of advertising. So how exactly does it work? So the program provides trees and labor to the agricultural producers at no cost. So I buy all the trees, I plant them, and it's at no cost to them. Fencing is required on one of the project sites. We utilize funding sources to provide it to them at very low cost, if not free, but the landowner is responsible for the labor to install those fences. I'm not a fencer. I don't know how it works. They're the experts on that, so I leave it in their capable hands. A memorandum of understanding is signed that states the project site is to be maintained for 5 years or for 10 years. And unique to the County of Barrhead is an initiative that they will pay the producer $100 an acre for riparian restoration for a maximum of $500 per year up to 5 years. But this only applies to crop producers. It doesn't apply to cattle guys. So how the program kind of works, and I'm just going to kind of walk you through like step one when a project is kind of envisioned to the final end of it, if you can even say that there's ever an end to these projects. So step one is the site visit. So I'll get a call from a producer, or I'll be talking to a producer through other means, and they say, hey, I might have a site you might be interested in. I'm like, okay, well, let's take a look at it and see. Because sometimes they do not qualify. There's been lots of calls that I've got that says, oh, we have a water body, we want to protect it. And it turns out to be a dugout, even though I asked them specifically in that phone call, is it a dugout? Oh, no, it's natural. No. So I've been to lots of dugout calls, unfortunately. So those do not qualify for the program. While I'm out there, I take a quick site assessment to determine the project needs. So does it need to be fenced off? Does it need to be fenced off in remedial plantings? What's the weed control like out there? Is the site polluted with weeds, which kind of adds a whole nother layer to the restoration? Does it need grass seeding? Will it restore itself on its own? There's a whole bunch of different things that go into the first site assessment. And that all goes into determining the project length. If it's a very high intensity project over a very long length and it needs a lot of work done to it, it can be a multi-year project. If it's just a quick fencing and then the vegetation should return on its own, that's kind of a one and done. I also determine the landowner's commitment and interest. So sometimes I get landowners that are very involved in the project. They want to be out helping planting, they want to be watering, they want to be doing all this stuff, they want to be taking pictures for their Facebook pages, stuff like that. Other times they just want me to do all the work, which is fine too. But that also determines the project length. If I get help with these projects from the producers, it tends to speed things up a little bit because they also kind of keep on top of me, encouraging me to keep going at it. So, and in that site visit, we discussed with the landowner how the program works. So yeah, it's a dry year. That doesn't mean you can go and, turn this riparian area that we're restoring back into cropland, like stuff like that. It kind of goes without saying, but it still needs to be discussed. So if a producer qualifies, if we go through all that step one and they're still interested and the site qualifies, step two is planning and funding. So it's not often that I can find a site and start it within that year. It never happens. The site assessment, by the time I do a site assessment and start a project, can be anywhere between a full year to 2, 3, 4 years, depending on what we need to do and how much funding we need to get. So through the site assessment, it's determined what shrubs and trees are needed and identified, and the quantities that are determined. If we're starting the project site the next year, I order plants in the fall for next season's plantings. So the County of Barrhead provides me with an area where I can order these tree seedlings and then plant them in the ground, sometimes for several years, where they're then transplanted out to sites. If fencing was required, it's a longer process. I don't have thousands and thousands of dollars to provide people with fencing, so that often comes with a hefty grant application. I need to determine whether we have the ability to fund riparian health inventories through cows and fish. If we don't, then we need to apply for funding again. So most of our funding comes through, like I said, the Agriculture Service Board funds a good chunk of it, but then for certain project sites, we'll bring in organizations like the Alberta Conservation Association, the Land Stewardship Center, the province through their WRP grant is a big one for us. But all this kind of goes into the fact that we do have a waiting list. We don't, like I said, very rarely do we have an interested person who wants to do a project that gets on the to-do list that year. It's often 2 or 3 years out just because of the manpower and the money situation that we have here. So step 3 is reclamation. So like I kind of touched on before, this varies wildly from project site to project site. It can be intense planting to simply exclusion fencing, adding a couple trees for increased biodiversity. Project site needs are site independent, so the density, species composition, species selection is all determined when we do that first site visit, or sometimes even site visits down the road, depending on how things have changed. Things that can impact what we plant and where and when and how much is erosion control, to increase biodiversity, if there's beaver issues in the area, and also the landowner's needs and wants. So all the work that we do is on private land through agriculture producers. So if they say that they don't want tall trees that are going to fall on their fence line, then we have to respect their wishes. If they're looking to do something productive with their land on top of doing riparian restoration, like planting food forests or planting for wildlife, we have to consider that as well. So that all kind of goes into determining what we plant out at these sites. We also try to plant around the weather, which is going absolutely horrible this year. So we plant as much as we can before a heavy rainfall, or when we know after heavy rainfall. But like I said, this is working absolutely terrible this year. I've planted a grand total of 50 trees because it's been so dry and hot, and we just don't have the means or the ability to water after they're planted. So basically once they're in the ground, they're pretty much on their own. So in years like the last couple of years, where it's been nice and wet, our survivability of our trees has been like over 90%. If I was to try to plant stuff this year, they would be all crispy and dead by now. So which is really unfortunate because I had planned on doing a lot of planting this year, but maybe the later half of the summer will be a bit more wet. So step 4, site monitoring. So the project doesn't end when the trees are planted or the fences are put up. There's always things going on after the fact. Weed control is a big one. A lot of these sites have significant weed pressures that go along with them because that's just the nature of disturbing riparian areas. If you disturb them, weeds tend to move in. So transplant mortalities, like I said, that once the trees are planted, they're basically on their own. So sometimes we have to go back and replant certain areas. I've been pretty fortunate, like I said, the last couple of years that the take has been pretty good. Reseeding grass, sometimes the grass seed doesn't take as well as I'd like. Wildlife damage, it's just the nature of the beast. I can't protect these riparian sites, and in a way they're planted for wildlife, so I can't be too mad if I go and plant 200 willow stakes and then all of a sudden a hungry moose goes and chews them all down. I've had that happen to me before and it kind of sucks, but that's just, that's just the way it is. We put up recognition signs after projects are done. That's to recognize the work that the families put into the site, recognizing that they've given up agricultural land to do these project sites, and also to recognize our sponsors for helping us out with this. We couldn't do that, we couldn't do it without them. And it also just encourages public engagement. So nobody would know what I'm doing if I didn't put these signs out here. Like, they don't see me out planting most of the time, but if they have the sign here and they can see the area growing up throughout the years, then they know that something's been done and they can track the progress. So I've had people comment that they've seen these signs and are actually watching as things grow. So that's kind of the whole point. So I just wanted to go into quickly a couple of the Riparian Improvement Program sites that I'm working on currently, and some of my favorite ones, actually. So the first one I want to talk about is the Stein site. It is located in the county of Barhead. It's on an unnamed stream, which is a tributary to the Paddle River. It's one of our first riparian improvement sites to get the double whammy of the riparian fencing and reclamation plantings to improve the health of the area. So before I started working on this site, it was part of a large sheep operation. So sheep were pastured out in the area, which was good and bad, as I'll talk about a little later. So it was fenced in 2018 through a grant through the Land Stewardship Center, and it was we started planting in 2019. So this is what the site looked like when I started. One of the problems with the site was there was significant beaver damage. So the beaver had gone and removed a lot of the mature tree stands, which led itself to some bank erosion and just a lack of biodiversity in the area as well. So a lot of the stream banks were not in terrible shape, but as you can see in this next photo here, we did have some sites where the sheep had gone in and kind of tromped down the bank a bit, leading to erosion issues and a bit of hummocking. So that's what's going on there. Also on the site is some significant weed pressure from thistles. So with the sheep being in the area, they were keeping the thistles at bay, but now they're not in there anymore. So it's kind of creating some issues with the thistle coming back. So the landowners have actually been really good about going and cutting it by hand. And we're hoping that in the next couple of years, as the trees I planted get taller, that we'll be able to have the sheep go in and do a quick in and out and help keep the thistle down that way. So the work to date, the entire south side is fenced off with a significant setback. The landowners were actually very good about doing quite a far setback from the creek there, which is awesome because it gives me more room to work with, and at the expense of them losing pasture ground. So I really want to thank them for that. As you can see in the background there, that's the fence. So in some areas, the setback is almost 20 meters. So that's awesome. We planted